Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. You know, in the Bible, there's a statement about oppression. It said, women will rule over you and children will be your oppressors. And I'm looking at this guy, Beto O'Rourke, you know, and everybody think, well, Beto. What has he done? We're talking about the possibility of a man like that being elected to run a $20 trillion economy. And what did he do before? He was a nanny for it. Wasn't he a nanny? He looked.
I don't know.
I think he looked at the little babies. I mean, isn't that wonderful? And you've got this woman, this Ocasio, whatever they OAC. I mean, the stuff they're coming out with is such insanity. And she says, well, we're going to do away with air travel in 20 years or 10 years and so forth. I mean, it's just crazy. President Trump said very wisely, can you imagine taking a train to Europe? I mean, it just doesn't work that way, you know. But, I mean, it's incredible.
But don't you find it equally incredible that the press follows them and gives credence to that?
They're giving them credence to all these statements, and huge crowds come out to hear this guy whose total career accomplishments has been sitting around in New York, not doing anything, and then being a nanny. I mean, come on. This is a huge economy. Nobody would hire somebody to run a major corporation who doesn't have any experience. And we seem to think that we can put in somebody with no experience who's 25 years old, never done anything, and we somehow think, well, they can run the country. They can't. They just can't. And it's time we wake up to the fact of what's going on. Okay, now, there's a border wall. The president apparently is not going to shut the government down. It would be a tragedy. And the congressional leaders say that they may have got a deal. Well, the deal is they're going to get about $1.5 billion, $1.37 billion or something like that. And they'll build about 200 miles of border fences.
Yeah, maybe some money will be found.
Yeah, well, they think there may be some, but both sides on this one are claiming victory, and we're going to find out what some of the people behind the scenes are saying, as we cannot have another government shutdown.
Well, despite the fact that it looks like maybe we won't, there are still hurdles to overcome. The agreement first has to pass the House and the Senate, and so far President Trump hasn't given any clear signal that he'll support it. Mark Martin has more.
President Trump acknowledged the breakthrough in negotiations at his rally for border security in El Paso last night, but gave no clear signal he'll support it.
Negotiators reached a deal in principle late Monday night, emerging from a closed-door meeting with the news. They agree it's not perfect and not everyone will be happy.
Not a single one of us is going to get every single thing we want, but nobody does.
It only includes about $1.4 billion for border barriers and not the $5.7 billion President Trump wanted. But the Democrats did back down from their demand to limit the number of detentions by ICE. The president trashing that initiative at his rally.
If we cut detention space, we are cutting loose dangerous criminals into our country.
A potential rival for the president in 2020, El Paso native Beto O'Rourke also held a rally in El Paso, challenging the president's border wall.
The U.S. cities of the U.S.-Mexico border are far safer than the U.S. cities deeper in the interior of the United States of America.
Some conservative lawmakers are already criticizing the deal. Representative Jim Jordan tweeted, while the president was giving a great speech, Congress was putting together a bad deal on immigration. Now it remains to be seen if the president agrees. Mark Martin, CBN News.
Well, I say it before, I say it again. We cannot shut the government down. We can't do it. And we also can't screw up the credit of the United States when we fail to raise the debt limit. So all this is facing Congress. Well, Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson is joining us now. And on Monday morning, negotiators apparently were dead. And now they say they've got a breakthrough. What is it?
Well, as you said, if there's one thing that all lawmakers on Washington agree with right now, it's that there cannot be another government shutdown, and they are working very hard to make sure that doesn't happen. Over the weekend, we heard that negotiations were failing, that we were not going to see some kind of deal, but that really is not an option. Lawmakers have put their faith in these 17 members of the conference committee that's bipartisan and bicameral, and they have to figure something out. And apparently, as of late last night, the members of those committees say they are cautiously optimistic that they have reached some kind of compromise that they believe will pass both the House and Senate and hopefully be signed by the president.
Well, there's some conservatives who are criticizing him right off the hitting the deal, and some of them don't even know about. Who have you talked to about this?
Well, we know last December, President Trump said that he was going to sign the bill that passed the Senate that would have prevented the government shutdown. And then he heard backlash from people like Sean Hannity and a lot of conservative lawmakers and a lot of his base saying not to do it, that the wall needs to be built. And we've already heard from some conservative lawmakers like Jim Jordan that he does not like what he's hearing is in this conference committee bill so far. And we also heard Sean Hannity call the bill garbage last night. But what I think is the most likely scenario is that President Trump will sign whatever bill comes out of this conference committee so that he will keep the government open, but that he will then find another way to build the wall, whether that's through declaring a national emergency or finding funds through the Department of Defense, finding other funds that he can use to build this wall. And the President Trump pretty much confirmed that last night at his rally in El Paso when he said that no matter what the conference committee bill includes for the wall funding, they're going to build the wall anyway, and they're going to get it done.
Well, you know, the sticking point that everybody was complaining about was that the Democrats wanted limited detentions and less beds, and so they did cave on that one, didn't they?
Well, I want to point out that since we have not seen the final bill, it's not confirmed that they have caved on that. Democrat Congresswoman Nita Lowey, who's on the conference committee, she was asked by MSNBC just this morning about that issue, and she said everyone should just wait and see what is in the final bill. So we don't know for sure that they did give up on that fight, but that is the issue that almost derailed this entire agreement over the weekend. Democrats on the committee were apparently requesting that the number of beds in ICE detention centers be decreased by 20% so that it decreases the number of undocumented immigrants that ICE can detain at a time. Republicans who heard this said, no way, absolutely not. And so they apparently, what is being reported right now that we know of in the current bill is that they did cave on that and that will not be included. But I've also heard that even if that number is decreased, maybe not by 20%, but even a little less than that, that ICE has other ways of getting funds for those beds when they need them. So hopefully it's not an issue that derails this negotiation.
Abigail, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, there's another member of Congress. You know, they had a Republican from out in Iowa who said some unkind thing about minorities, and they literally stripped him. He talked about white power and so forth. They stripped him of all his committee assignments. Well, as a Muslim member of Congress, she's apologized for making anti-Semitic comments on Twitter. And Democratic leaders pressured Representative Ilhan Omar to take back her remarks. But as Gary Lane reports, it's not the first time the Democrats have had to deal with her controversial tweets.
Republicans were quick to jump on Omar's comments that support for Israel in Congress is bought by campaign donations. They say it's another sign that the Democratic Party is trending away from Israel, and its leaders are being forced to deal with the openly anti-Jewish sentiments expressed by its Muslim members. On the CBN News program Faith Nation, Neil Strauss of the Republican Jewish Coalition explained why Omar's anti-Israel tropes were actually anti-Semitic.
This goes into the anti-Semitic trope of Jews using their money to control our world's politics, our nation's politicians.
The firestorm forced Democratic leaders to deal with Omar's openly anti-Jewish comments. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called on her to apologize, saying anti-Semitism must be rejected in all forms. In her apology, Omar said, "Anti-Semitism is real, and I am grateful for Jewish allies and colleagues who are educating me on the painful history of anti-Semitic tropes." The social media firestorm came over the weekend after Omar tweeted that support for Israel stemmed from campaign donations, naming the pro-Israel lobbying group AIPAC. It does not give members of Congress campaign donations. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said Omar's comments were unacceptable, and he would take disciplinary action against her if Democrats did not act on their own. On Fox News, Representative Peter King called the comments shameful.
To be suggesting that somehow members of Congress are being paid off by Jews, by AIPAC, that goes right into the anti-Semitic bias which has plagued the world for too long.
This was Omar's second anti-Semitic tweet. She earlier apologized for tweeting in 2012 that Israel had hypnotized the world. Last month, Michigan Representative Rashida Tlaib also criticized Israel and members of Congress, saying they are more loyal to Israel than the United States. Senator Marco Rubio sponsors a bill that punishes companies participating in BDS, the Boycott, Divest, and Sanctions movement against Israel. Both Omar and Tlaib support the BDS movement. Rubio suggests the Democrats don't know how to deal with new members of Congress who openly express anti-Semitic views.
There's a growing group of people in the Democratic Party that are anti-Israel openly, and I think they're afraid of them.
Democratic Party leaders may likely have more such political fires to put out in the months ahead, and that may play right into the hands of President Trump and the Republicans, who are likely to make Israel and anti-Semitism a campaign issue in next year's election. Gary Lane, CBN News.
As I understand, that woman is on the prestigious Foreign Relations Committee, and to leave her on a committee like that, Nancy Pelosi needs to discipline her. It isn't enough to say, well, I'm offended by those remarks. The Republicans worked on their man very severely for doing something, in my opinion, wasn't as bad as what this woman has done. But this anti-Semitism, I mean, it's there. And you cannot have people who hate Jews and hate Israel and claim that they're running our country and buying off congressmen. This is just terrible. And she should be disciplined. But it isn't enough to say, well, her remarks offend me. What are you going to do about it, Nancy?